Friday's little sell-off could mean more than what you think. We are actually seeing some signals actually confirm that we've been talking about for about a month on this channel, waiting for those divergences to confirm. And we're going to talk about all those things today as we get into some technical analysis for the SPY, Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, NVIDIA, and AMD. And NVIDIA has its earnings this week, so that's going to be really important. Let's get into it. Before we get into the actual charts here, I just wanted to mention two things. We have FOMC minutes on Wednesday, and we also have NVIDIA earnings on Wednesday. And we're mainly going to talk about these when we come to yields, and then this we will talk about when we get into the actual NVIDIA chart. And it's starting to look like the gas is running out, and we are most likely going to see, even with good news, some kind of sell the news thing. But we'll get to that in a moment. The big thing here that I wanted to point out in our kind of macro video here, we're going to be looking at the daily charts for the most part here. And then on Sunday, we are going to come back and look at these shorter time frames and give you guys those risk ranges, which actually really worked this week. We noticed a divergence down here outside of the risk range, and 68% of the time we do land back within it by Friday close. That's exactly what happened. And then if you were paying attention to the monthly risk range, well, that's right up here. And every time we've come up there, we've sold back below pretty quick. So we need to pay attention to these levels. If you want to get these levels for the individual stocks, you can go over to my Patreon. Sometimes I do actually post throughout the day some of the signals that I am seeing. It's very, very fun, and I appreciate it if you are a part of that community already. Big thing we need to point out on the SPY is it is actually doing what we were talking about, right? Back here, we were talking about it setting up some kind of daily divergence if we do get that positivity to come in instead of breaking down. Now, this was, some people were saying double top. I overall mentioned this could be a double topping up here, but we have to be open to the fact that this could cross to the upside. We're in positive territory, so we could be making some kind of next point for divergence. Now, that actually has confirmed as of Friday. So big news, Friday actually could be hinting that this week could be very dangerous for the market, especially when we have two huge events like NVIDIA earnings and FOMC minutes. Now, let's really look into these divergences. We actually had a small divergence on the RSI up here that actually gave us this little sell-off, and then we actually bounced back up to this level, and we see that ABC pattern leading into that strength, and we kind of just get this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 push. A 5 push is pretty dang good, and what we're seeing now is we saw that sell off, and we're getting another push higher, possibly setting up a slightly lower high to kind of put us over the edge. And that's exactly what happened on Friday. Friday's selling actually did get this MACD to cross, meaning that the momentum may have shifted. And if we actually look at this price action right here on the RSI, we actually have another divergence right here. So you actually have a divergence across the board on both the MACD and the RSI at the same time. And then in the most recent price action, you have a triple divergence on the RSI, with that RSI starting to point down. So if this is able to get below that center line, we're going to see that momentum start to shift. And then the MACD, we'll have to see when this is actually able to get into negative territory. I believe a negative trend for 2024 is going to begin very, very soon. And we like to sell off around this mid-February into March period of time. Now, if we wanted to break down from here, how exactly would that happen? Well, we would most likely pull down into these levels down here, create some kind of right shoulder. Okay, so we would get that head and shoulders we've been talking about. Overall, we were stating how we really thought that this would break down to this level, bounce back up, and then get some kind of right shoulder up here. This still could be considered a right shoulder. It does not exceed this high. So the only time that that gets cut out is if it starts to exceed that high, and we're going to talk about that in Sunday's video with the shorter time frames. But for now, if this wanted to break down, really pay attention to this type of structure unfolding in front of us. The Qs, we are going to be updating those ranges on Sunday, so please do subscribe. Please join us back here. And the thing that we wanted to point out was we're starting to lose this little trend line that we've had for quite some time, and maybe that means we actually do want to see some kind of breakdown, get that little pop a little higher, and then start to break down to lower levels, right? This is really how I see it playing out. If we do get that selling and then we get some kind of bounce maybe with the FOMC minutes with NVIDIA, maybe that sets up a lower high again, and then we get some kind of head and shoulders. This is overall what I'm looking at to the bear side. Now, I do want to talk about the bull side for one moment. if we actually do get some selling into this area and then we see that curl back up and we curl back up in positive territory, it's actually a good sign we might come and test this high, maybe test that monthly expected move one more time. And look at that reaction from that monthly expected move. We literally touch it for like an hour during this week, actually on Monday, and then we see that sell-off come. And this selling happened before we actually got that CPI news. And then once we got that CPI news, that selling continued. Now, this did bring us outside of that range. We saw those divergences. I believe there was a little 15-minute divergence outside of those weekly expected moves. This is something I go over in my course that's down in the description. It's going to be $100. I believe at the end of this month, I might be bumping that up to $200. I overall stated that I was making it very, very cheap in the beginning. So if you guys would like to learn a lot of the things that I learned in order to get good at trading, go down in the description and check that out. But this is overall how it would break down. We'd most likely get this to create some kind of right shoulder with some kind of feeble bounce right up in here, and then head to lower levels, getting a reaction off of that monthly expected move. And then if it wanted to go back up, all you have to do is pay attention to this MACD. If it's still above in positive territory, then you have a good shot of testing this high one more time. Apple, we are going to go into the shorter time frames on Sunday. Okay, so join us back Sunday because Apple's going to be pretty dang important this week, and we could be getting some kind of big reaction actually to the upside out of Apple. The probabilities of this actually going up from here are a little bit higher than breaking through this trend. I had to remake this trend line because I thought it was slightly off. I think it got moved around. But if you just look at this trend line that goes all the way back, it goes all the way back to the bottom here. So it comes up. We have 3 points where it connects to it. And then we see that we're going to possibly get a reaction once we look at those shorter time frames. So really pay attention to Apple. If this wants to curl up, even for a few days, I would be making some kind of point of reference here, not necessarily paying attention to this expected move from that falling triangle here. I would really expect maybe some resistance to come in at these higher levels right here, creating another lower high, really solidifying, hey, we are in a negative trend. And then once this trend line is able to break, once this important trend line that we just zoomed out on is able to break, we are most likely going to see more selling come in, and we'll most likely see that stop somewhere around that 165 level. So we really have to pay attention to Apple this week and come back on Sunday because these shorter time frames are pretty important for this stock. Amazon, we were overall talking about how this is not necessarily a divergence, and it ended up not even confirming. We don't necessarily have that divergence on the RSI. We don't have it on the MACD. And actually, we did have it a little bit on the MACD, which just told me when I have one and not the other, when I have MACD but not the RSI, it tells me, hey, this is most likely some kind of pullback. And that's exactly what it was. It was a short pullback down to the 20-day moving average. And then we see that reaction with earnings. Now up in here, you guys know this was a very good trade for us. We saw this continuation triangle right up in here. And that really just led us to believe, hey, this is most likely going to pop higher. And now we're creating that head and shoulders on those shorter time frames. And we're going to go over this in Sunday's video. But the big thing here is we got that crossing of the MACD. All of these charts are looking like they're starting to cross on their MACDs to the downside, which could be a very early signal that next week is going to be pretty volatile. And we could see selling come in with FOMC minutes and with NVIDIA earnings. How that would break down, most likely we would get something like this, a little 1, 2, 3 push down, and then we get another reaction for another little bump up to give us this actual head and shoulders here. So this is really what I'm looking at in Amazon, how I think it will break down, and we're just going to hop right back into Tesla next. Tesla, I want to show you these shorter time frames as well. We overall were stating, hey, there's divergence. There's a 2-hour divergence, which leads to that daily crossing of the MACD a lot of the time. And guess what? That ended up happening. We got a pullback. Now it seems our ABC pattern is really playing out as of right now. I would actually say this measured move lands you about to the top side of this important range. It lands at the outside of that Bollinger Band. So if we do see that positivity come in, really that's what I'm going to pay attention to on the shorter time frames for Sunday, because we could be getting that pullback to get this retest of this important area right here. and then we see that positivity come back in again. So we want to pay attention to Tesla, but this was a very, very good trade to take. And if you were part of my live video and part of my, subscribe to the channel, you actually would have caught this move. So I really appreciate all my subscribers out there, and I hope you found this helpful. The other thing is these Bollinger Bands, they're starting to get tight again. There's most likely a big move coming in Tesla. Is that going to be something that fills this gap and is some kind of trap and then goes the other way with NVIDIA earnings or FOMC minutes, or are we going to see more positivity for some kind of full-on retest? That's something that we really need to pay attention to. The MACD down here is going to be very important. If this is able to get into positive territory, you have that opportunity for more positivity. But if this just goes up near positive territory and then curls back over, that negative trend is most likely going to continue, and we're going to see this low tested. NVIDIA we've been talking about for a very long time, and all of this price action is going to be very important soon. Now, this is a very parabolic move. Okay, so this is where it pays to, we do have those divergences and things like that, but it pays to just be like, hey, if it crosses in positive territory, we could really see that positivity come in, especially when we're tight on these Bollinger Bands. And guess what? That positivity was huge. So we're seeing a parabolic move in some of these AI stocks. And that really worries me going into next week. NVIDIA earnings is probably going to be one of the most important things of 2024, and it could be something that actually goes bad, whether it's good news or not. Sure, I'm going to pay attention to those weekly ranges for NVIDIA. So if you do want the weekly range for NVIDIA this week, join that Patreon down in the description. Seriously, it really does help. With these parabolic moves, you can go outside of it, but usually you at least see hesitance near it or something like that. And then next week it gets that second push. So that's something to pay attention to. A parabolic move like this, it can, with the earnings, even if the earnings are good, buyers need to be there. There needs to be people that see more value than what it is worth right now. And it looks like we are way, way up in that overbought territory. Sure, we could go a little bit higher. That's where I'm going to be paying attention to that weekly expected move. But we could go a whole lot lower. This is a very parabolic move, just like that SMCI. Very parabolic move. And I would not try to short that thing or anything like that. But NVIDIA, it's losing its 9-day moving average. It's starting to break down a little bit before earnings. Is there going to be some people excited to get in a little bit more before those earnings and then see that drop off? That's what to pay attention to. All you need to know is the Bollinger Band is right above you, so any upside is probably limited. And then you see the downside here. We could head to that 570 pretty quick if NVIDIA really wanted to. And AMD is a little bit different story. We were overall saying, hey, yeah, it could pop out to the upside out of this kind of continuation triangle we formed here, and we're getting that price real tight. So a big move is expected to come this week. And really, that's going to depend on the NVIDIA earnings. So that's going to be very, very important. I really was looking for, with this bar right here, I believe that was on Wednesday, I wanted that to, potentially cross the next day on this MACD. That would tell me, hey, this is most likely going to test that high or create a point of divergence. So that means some positivity could come in right before NVIDIA earnings. So it would have been a good opportunity for that momentum to die out. The momentum is dying out as of right now. Maybe this is even some kind of trap at this point to head to lower levels. Really going to pay attention to that weekly expected move to the downside. If we get there pretty quick early on in the week, we actually could see some positivity coming out of AMD. So I'm going to pay attention to a lot of things going into this week, and we're going to go into the shorter time frames to kind of help us out of what could happen before and after those earnings and FOMC minutes. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the FOMC minutes and these yields. Okay, we are actually coming up to our point that our target that we set a long time ago. We said 4.362 was most likely where we would head to. We're actually right at that area right now, and we could be getting another push higher with the FOMC minutes. They have already stated in previous times over the past month or two, they're not planning on cutting those rates in March, and people see that as some bad news. Okay, people think that the rate cuts are going to be good. And then when the rate cuts actually happen, that's when we usually see the market flip the other way. And that is because we overall are in a point where these rates have been high for a long time. So if the Fed cannot cut rates sooner because the inflation isn't where they want it to be, then that leads to more things in the system able to break. It causes some turmoil in the banking system, and that's what we need to pay attention to going forward is when they actually do cut, they most likely are going to be reacting to something that is potentially on the verge of breaking. And then if it does, that's when we really see that crash come in. The dollar was really something we were talking about, how the dollar and the market are negatively correlated, meaning if the dollar goes up, the market should be coming down. That's not happening right now, okay? So this is a signal we need to pay attention to. Maybe this is a smart money versus dumb money thing. Maybe the smart money is slowly selling as this thing goes higher. In the overall market, they're slowly selling, getting their money back into the dollar. That way they can react if the prices go a whole lot lower. And I believe that might be the case here. I'm still looking at this 105.65 area. I really think this up in here might be our potential for some kind of bounce. So if we do actually want to head higher, we see that this expected move here actually could come into play with this little head and shoulders, and we'll see where that actually lands us, and it lands us right at this area here. So if we do get some kind of selling, look for the dollar to head up towards this 105.65 pretty quick. But the overall thing you need to take away from this portion right here is we are seeing the dollar kind of go up while the market goes up, and that isn't really a signal that something is not performing correctly. We actually should be seeing selling right now, and maybe dumb money is getting trapped. VIX, I want to go over the shorter time frames on Sunday for sure. I want to go over those. We do have a gap below us, so if we do see that positivity, look for this gap to get filled. But I'm going to be looking for divergences around this area. We saw divergences right here that kind of led to a pop in volatility. We have those divergences here that led to volatility. But the big picture here is you need to see this is in positive territory. So that means on the daily, the VIX is now in a positive trend. And if we're able to hold above this 200, we actually can see volatility spike pretty high. Now, when we actually see major volatility come in, major crashing coming in, you're going to want this 50 to actually come up and cross that 200. We talked about this in the past. If that 50 actually does cross that 200, it's a good sign. If it's able to hold a price above that, well, it's not necessarily a price. If it's able to hold a value above that, then that could mean that we're going to see volatility remain in the market for quite some time. We were looking at this in the past, and this is where we were stating, hey, there could be a big bull run here, because we're not going to most likely get this to cross. We had divergences up here on a bunch of different stocks. Apple was one of them that we notified you guys about, and it was a great trade, and it led to this huge run. Now Apple's, selling off pretty good, but you notice around that time we started to get that bull run. We did not cross the 50 to the 200. We actually came very close to it, and then we came back down. So this is a signal you can pay attention to for when a bigger crash is going to come. We are most likely going to see this 50 actually cross above that 200, and that will be when the pain really comes. The main takeaway here is on Friday, we might have gotten a little hint of what is to come this week, and we have two very important events going on with the NVIDIA earnings and FOMC minutes on the same day. Okay, so they're on the same exact day, which can invite even more volatility into this market. And volatility is now in a positive trend. So it is a time to be cautious, okay? I know I've been saying that a lot, but every single week it seems we have a time to be cautious, and this is another one of those times. And we have a huge event, two huge events happening at the same time next week. So really pay attention to your charts. But right now, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching my video. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for subscribing. I hope to see you back here on Sunday when we go through some shorter time frames. Make sure to look out for my Patreon if you want those weekly expected moves. Those can be very useful when you're trying to find some kind of top every single week. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great weekend. Put the stocks away for a little bit and join me back on Sunday. Peace.